if people don't want the left to be distrustful, everything shouldn't be a cloak and dagger situation. Like, who is this being backdoored for? Who is this being hidden from? Who needs the plausible deniability if they're not just being card check regular schmegular style? I don't know, man. It's like you don't want people to be paranoid. You don't want people to be alarmist. You don't want people to be talking about frauds and sellouts and stuff. Okay, try being a little more opaque, like a little less opaque. A little transparency goes a long way. This stuff is it. I was talking to a reporter today who's writing this long thing. It's not important, but you know, people have a purient interest in the division on the left, and I don't want to feed it. And I was trying to put it into context by talking about the fact that it's like, I understand why there's so much venom. And part of it is that, you know, something like force the vote could have been diffused if Congress members were transparent about an alternative plan. We were begging them, okay, just tell us what the alternative game plan is. But when instead of like an alternative plan of attack is described, or instead of being honest about what they feel like their political limitations are, or how they've been threatened, or instead of just staying silent, there's misdirection. Oh, we got to save our political capital for the fight for 15. Oh, we're going to use the exact same argument justifying fighting for impeachment that we said was a silly argument when we were talking about force the vote. You know, AOC jumping in some of those Twitter fights the way that she did brought attention to her that some of those other squad members, they didn't get that heat because they didn't put themselves in there and start saying things that felt like misdirection. You know, doing these interviews, you know, like Rashida Tlaib did, where she 3 weeks after the fact is still parroting the lie about Kevin McCarthy becoming Speaker of the House. That's where all of the suspicion and like frustration is coming from. It's not just, at that point, it's not just a disagreement about tactics. It's a feeling that you've been misled. And so I would say to people who want to bring the left together, and I would say to congressional members, you know, Rokana says he watches our show, who are concerned about how to reconstitute the left and get their donation coffers full again from a bunch of disaffected leftists, it would be to stop playing cloak and dagger with all of this stuff. Because that's what feels different from the squad of 2018. This just, none of this feels, none of this passes the smell test.
Well, you know, there's an overall strategic
disagreement. Jayapal, not Tlaib. You're right. I misspoke. Sorry, go ahead.
There's an overall strategic disagreement there, which is the propriety of working within the Democratic Party when a lot of the people who help power these DSA campaigns to the U.S. Congress are adamantly opposed to that. And as well, there's a tension over...
Well, it's not a DSA campaign. They were Justice Democrat campaigns.
Well, I mean, Cori Bush is a DSA member.
I mean, DSA endorses people, but these were campaigns run.
She's an actual member. She's an actual person. So you ask her if she's a socialist, she's going to say yes.
So say it's AOC, but she was she was chosen and run by the Justice Democrats. I think that's an important distinction, because you have the co-founder of Justice Democrats telling people that this was the purpose of recruiting, fundraising for, and running these candidates was for them to be adversarial. And they're betraying that commitment. And the DSA as an organization is taking a different posture with respect to these people. And I don't think it's useful to erase that these are, like, there was an ideological motivator to even finding these people and running them and fundraising for them. And that was Justice Democrats defined, as opposed to DSA, which is a much larger, less politically ideological organization.
Are you saying that AOC should be accountable to Justice Democrats?
Well, I think that she should be accountable to both, except that I don't think that the DSA, you know, my observation is that the DSA, I will be surprised if the DSA ever attempts to hold her accountable to anything. It feels like there's, you know, I say this as a DSA member, but it feels like there's an investment in her being a socialist and being kind of good for the DSA, more so than a desire to have the organization come and its ideals come first, and for the DSA to wag the tail of the congressperson as opposed to the other way around, as I said on our last episode.
I mean, I agree. I think it's alienating that all of these feelings are put into a handful of politicians who are not actually national politicians. And, after the end of the Bernie campaign, there's no consensus national leader of, what we're going to call the left anti-capitalist movement in this country, which is, again, dispersed among a variety of groups and tendencies. I hang on, let me just find the right words on this one. I think that what you're describing is reflective of a greater tension, which is, okay, what should the socialist posture be in 2021? Should it be working within the Democratic coalition, which does hold the power right now, in order to attempt to pass some big legislation or attempt to influence some legislation that's going to pass, or should it be opposition?
It's not an inside-outside strategy. Those are not choices. It has to be both. Obviously, a bunch of people with like flags standing outside of the White House have less power than someone who's a congresswoman in the White House, who has less power than a congresswoman in the White House who's working in tandem with the people with flags who can cause a ruckus. Like, this is not a binary choice. And the whole point is, like, this argument is getting framed as you're against the insiders, you're against the squad. No, I want the squad to realize that the only power they really have as quote unquote insiders aren't to try to outmaneuver Pelosi. You're not outmaneuvering Pelosi. It's never going to happen. Pelosi has been aggregating power to herself for 30 years, and people owe her favors, the likes of which you'll never begin to be able to overcome. She has more money and more power and more context and more wealth than anybody in Congress, and a bunch of little socialists aren't going to change that. But don't despair. Don't freak out. Don't be sad, because what Nancy Pelosi doesn't have is the people and the court of public opinion and millions of dollars of small dollar donations that decouple them entirely from being responsible to this corporate machine that everybody else has been beholden to. That's the whole point. And what's so frustrating is not that anybody I don't hate AOC. I don't have any feelings about any of these people. They're not my friends. But that they are holding this enormous wealth of power that they earned in the goodwill of millions of people. No, they aren't national politicians, but they benefited from national goodwill and national campaigns and national fundraising efforts to get where they are. And so they don't have to give a crap about that. They can say, all I care about my constituents, and I'm going to keep my head down and do that. That's fine. But they don't at the same time get to enjoy the benefit of being kept on the pedestal that this national audience put them on. So they got to make a choice. And I think that they should choose not to forego the power that comes from that national audience. They shouldn't court the national audience just because it's nice for people to love you and to be on the cover of magazines. They should do it because that represents real power in terms of campaign dollars and ability to mobilize. And also, yes, to organize, to Jane's point. And that they don't realize that they think that, oh, we got to choose inside, outside, or if we play nice and keep our heads down. Did you see this new article, this book, Nancy Pelosi's book that has apparently had a whole chapter about how she's subdued the squad?
I think that's a book about Nancy Pelosi.
That was sorry, yeah.
I did. I saw that.
It's
pretty funny. If you want to read that.
That's what it is. That's what you're up against. Yeah. So do you want to be with us, or you don't want to keep getting, cucked by Nancy Pelosi?
It's well put. Well put.